Hello and welcome to Copenhagen Day 9. Well, today marked the start of the high-level segment of the summit. That basically means that the ministers are in place and it's now up to them to take all the blueprints and drafts and to draft treaties together and to concise them into an agreement that will be ready for signing by the heads of state at the end of the week. Now, to mark this change of pace, there was another ceremony held. It showed a video of a young girl watching climate change on her television and then going to bed where she had nightmares about waking up in a world where life had become just impossible. This was followed by a Danish girls' choir who lent their voice to a call for action. And while we were being told there's a change in pace now that the ministers have taken over, the message was still very much that of the opening day, calling on all those present to do the right thing for the next generation. Now, UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon praised the world for the distance that they have travelled already, but did point out that the time was now. They had 3 days to lay the foundations of a legally binding treaty. He pointed out that the world didn't have another year in which to negotiate. Mother Nature won't wait. Well, he said the time for reasonable demands were over. Nobody would get everything they wanted, but everyone, he said, would get what they needed. Indeed, for many of the nations gathered here in this Bella Centre in Copenhagen, the effects of climate change aren't something in the future, they're already being felt. As you're about to see in this next report from Papua New Guinea, the rising temperatures are already forcing people to leave their homes.
By 2015, this atoll off the coast of Papua New Guinea could well be a mirage. The Carteret Islands are sinking and sinking fast. The ocean is rising. Salt water has eaten up the shoreline and invaded the gardens. For many, it's time to pack up and go. But without help from the government, hundreds are stuck on this sinking atoll. Paul TSUBE is one of the few who managed to leave early. He didn't wait for government assistance to migrate. He now lives in Buka in North Bougainville, where he feels he finally has a future. But leaving his past behind wasn't easy.
It's a saddening thing to do. Very, very sad to leave my parents' grave, my grandparents' grave. It's not easy to leave a place where you were born.
For years, he's watched his homeland go to waste, and at times his people go hungry.
You would find that there are no longer breadfruit trees, banana trees, swampy taro. There's hardly anything that you would see out there.
Scientists are still debating why the atoll is sinking. Paul TSUBE blames global warming and the developed world for what's happened to his island.
I think the global warming, sea level rising and destroying our island is the whole cause of the industrialized countries. And I think something has to be done by the industrialized nations to see to it that we get some sort of assistance from them.
Water storage.
For now, the only assistance available to islanders in transit in Buka is provided by this man.
If there is no space, I give them my bed and I find somebody. I find a place somewhere.
Until the official relocation program kicks in, it's in Taihu PAIS's house that islanders will find shelter during high tides or when in need of hospital care.
This house caters for only a family or two, but I cater for more than 2 families in one house. And as you can see here, at this present time, as I talk to you, there is over 200 people here, living here now.
Churches and NGOs have taken it upon themselves to find a solution, but money is scarce and progress is slow. The plight of the Carteret has so far failed to make waves.
Well, here in the Bella Centre in Copenhagen today, a group of climate refugees took part in the world's first ever international climate hearing. Indeed, from Uganda to Peru and even from Tuvalu, they came to tell us how climate change was already destroying their lives. According to the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mary Robinson, the world should get ready to adopt some 200 million climate refugees by 2050.
In 2007, we had floods that came and covered the whole village. And there, some of us left the village and went for refuge outside our village.
Drought, floods. Constance is a climate change victim. Uganda, her country, is just one of the many areas that are affected. Today, Constance is in Copenhagen as a witness in the international climate hearing organised by Oxfam. The NGO has brought witnesses in from around the world. Pelenice has travelled all the way from Tuvalu in the Pacific Ocean.
And the land is getting smaller and smaller. It's been eaten away and your trees are falling. Then you know the water is coming up. The water is coming up.
Former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Mary Robinson acted as the president of this informal court.
We already have people who are migrating internally. We're not hearing about them because they're not crossing borders yet, but they will be. And the estimate is, the Global Humanitarian Forum, which I serve on the board of, has estimated we will have a minimum of 200 million climate refugees by 2050. If we take some decisions, if we take no decisions, we won't have a world in 2050.
The symbolic verdict of the court was then handed to Ivo de Boer, the UN Executive Secretary in charge of climate. Oxfam's message is simple: climate change kills. Act now.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for tonight, but do join us again, same time, same channel tomorrow for Copenhagen Day 10, when we'll see whether or not the change of pace announced today has led to any progress.
Irvine there, keeping an eye on all things Copenhagen and climate change for us there, leading France 24's team in Denmark. Eve, thank you very much. Looking forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. Now let's move on to things here in the studio. You may have noticed Catherine Norris-Trent is here, which means a world in motion. Now what, Catherine?
Well, Mark, we're starting off in Iran with anti-government protests, which have mounted to a big extent online in a rather unusual campaign. And it's all centering off around a young opposition activist called Majid Tavakoli. And he's a student league leader, and he was arrested just over a week ago. And since then, state media have released a photograph of him in detention. And it's a rather unusual photograph. You can see he's wearing a woman's veil. We can just see in those quick images there. Now, authorities say Mr. Tavakoli was trying to flee wearing women's clothing as a disguise, but his supporters say releasing these photographs is just an attempt to discredit him. So out of solidarity, lots of male campaigners are also donning